I'm sure you'll agree. Your Royal Highness, ladies and gentlemen, everybody here in London and everyone watching live around the country, please welcome to the stage Peter Jackson. Peter, it's an extraordinary experience to see it. I know that there are two aspects to it. One of them is the philosophical aspect of what you're doing. The other is the technological aspect. The two things are completely wedded. Explain to us how this came about and how the technology has brought that footage right into the present.
Well, I mean, when we first started this project, the Imperial War Museum had just invited me to make a film, and their only real brief was to use their archive footage in a fresh and original way. So it took me a while to think about what to do, but the first idea that came into my head once I got back home is in New Zealand we've got lots of computers, so you know, yes, we do. Yes, but I just thought, well, why don't we use this computer firepower to just see, and it was a question that I was intensely interested in, how well can we store, can old World War I footage actually be just restored, cleaned up, and brought back into, you know, and so that was a question that I didn't know the answer to it and so the Imperial War Museum scanned about 4 minutes and sent them down, and we just went through this process of getting of figuring out how to do it, and when we finally got it done, I was absolutely stunned. I mean, it was far more it was just far more powerful than I ever expected. And the thing that leapt out at me at that point were the faces of the men. It was actually just their faces. They suddenly became real people. And so that then told me, because I still didn't know what the film was, but that told me that it's the story of them. Yeah. It's not the story of the war. It's not the story of the strategy. It's the soldier's story. And then that led to the next step, was the only voices we should hear should be the voices of the men. So in a way, I went into it just being led by as these various discoveries. I mean, the film kind of shaped itself, really, as we went along.
The processes of turning the old footage into footage that we sort of think of as more current is manifold. But one of the things, obviously, is making sure that the film is moving at the right speed, because silent film will go anything from 10 to 20 frames a second. And then taking black and white footage and colorizing it, which is something that in the past, I have to say, I haven't been very struck by, but I thought it was really vivid this time. How complicated were those two things to do?
Well, the first thing, and the main thing at the beginning, was to get the black and white restored. So you go from old bad black and white to good black and white, because you can't. There's no point putting color on on bad black and white. So, and that was a process of just think of the silent movies and think of every aspect of fixing, of restoring them, and every one of those is a separate process. It's not just one process. It's like a production pipeline you've got to put them through. So there's the scratches, the grain, making it sharp. Because of the age, the sprocket holes have shrunk, so the film sort of jiggles around. So you've got to stabilise it. Some of it's too dark, some of it's too bright. So you grade it, and then with the speed. As you say, I mean, you've got to know how fast the original film was shot. I mean, that you can't get it to 24 frames a second unless you know what the original speed was. So we had to, and I mean, I just thought somehow I'd read somewhere that it was all 16 frames a second, but no, it was all over the place. It was 10, 12, 30. Most of it's 14, 15, some it's 16, 18, and what the computer would have to do then. Because if you imagine you've got 24 frames and you're starting with which is a second, and you've got 15 frames in the original film, you want to turn it to 24. So what happens then is a very complicated. Well, I mean, it's simple for us. You just hit a button, but I'm assuming it's complex. The computer actually builds up the missing bits from the frames either side. So the computer, and so if you're telling it it's shot at 13 frames, it'll do it up to 24. If you tell it it's 17 frames, it'll do it 24. So it has to construct missing frames, and then actually I think the single most amazing thing is when the speed looks right. And it's not speed where it's step printed or you've slowed the thing down like you often see. It's actually smooth, and the nuances and the subtleties and the life of the men appear then, and then we had the help of an American company, Stereo D, who took on the job of doing the colorizing and the 3D work. And I think the thing with colorizing is that, it just had to be detailed and labor-intensive and slow and meticulous, because I think in the colorizing that we've mostly seen has been for TV shows with a low budget and a fast turnaround. But if you can stop and just do each individual color painstakingly, one step at a time, the amount of time you spend on it will be rewarded by the quality. The more time, the better it'll look, really.
The other thing that's really astonishing is the moment when you start to hear what seems to be synchronized sound. And in fact, I remember when I was first watching it, I had this strange moment. I thought, how is this possible? How am I hearing those voices? I presume that there was an amount of lip reading that you were doing. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, well, there are people who lip read for a profession, like they do police security footage, some silent footage, and so it's a very skillful thing. And so we had a couple of those people helping us, and they would say, well, in this shot, this soldier is saying this. And then we had Nigel Stone, who's a sound guy that we work with over here, a Kiwi actually. He got a group of British actors to come in from all around the country because we wanted the accents to match the actual unit on screen.
Yeah.
So Nigel did a great job at recording the voices to match the. And that it's right because the voices actually match your lips.
Yeah.
So it's.
There's one extraordinary moment when we see being read preparations for battle just before they go in, and you actually found the text, yeah?
Yeah. Well, it's a shot from a movie called The Battle of the Somme, and we wanted to use the shot, but we didn't know what this guy was saying, obviously, and it was hard to read the lips, because it was a profile. It was quite a long way away. But I one night I went online and we found out it was a Bedford regiment, and it was on July. It was on June the 30th. It was one day before the attack on the Somme. So I went into the Bedford, the war diaries, and they have all the paperwork there. And I thought it might be the orders for the attack on the Somme, and that was like 12 or 13 pages long. And where on earth in this 12 or 13 pages is this little bit of the guy talking? I looked at it, but then I kept on going in the archives, and I found this little bit of paper that was stored there, which is like a pep talk about, and then so what I thought, well, I wonder if this is it. It was just a small bit, and it just was about, but it's just to do England proud sort of thing. It was like a little pep talk that obviously was intended to be read to the troops, and I thought, wow, I bet this is it. So what I did then is I read that at 2 or 3 different speeds. And then Jabez, our editor, would use my voice, and he'd do these different speeds to see if he could get a match. And bango, we got a hit. And then we got somebody much better than me to read it.
In the Bill Douglas Museum in Exeter, they've got at least one of the cameras that they shot the Battle of the Somme on. And when you look at it, it is a wooden box, and it's an extraordinary thing. Seeing that footage then taken and having all this modern day technology applied to it, which brings it right up to date. I mean, it feels like what you're also doing is, it's almost like a history of cinema itself. You're going from the very, very earliest techniques of film and combining them with this extraordinary.
That's true, yeah, that's true.
What does that feel like philosophically from a filmmaker's point of view?
Well, I mean, it's interesting because obviously at any given point, cinema is based on the technology that you've got. I mean, we're used to modern combat footage where it's like small cameras, handheld, and everything else, and so, but here we've got the very first war that had ever been filmed. But I thought, I mean, all credit to the cameramen. I mean, the cameramen that were on the Western Front, and they had, as you say, they had this great big box to lug around it, and it's interesting looking at it because there is definitely film there where it's real stuff. The film of the trench raid where they're racing the guys. I mean, that's a real trench raid, and some of the stuff at the end when the Scottish guys are marching towards the explosions. I mean, this is the real thing, and you can always tell the real thing because the cameraman's behind sandbags. He's hunkered down, and we sometimes zoomed in a bit to lose the sandbags in the front, but that guy is like, he's not getting anywhere close to the action. And there isn't really any true combat footage from the First World War because, you can't do a handheld camera thing with this big camera and keep yourself safe. So, but I was I was amazed at how much actual real stuff, and there's all the smiling at the camera and everything else, because of course these guys have never seen a camera before. I mean, most of them would have gone to the movies and seen Chaplin films, but they wouldn't have actually seen the camera that actually filmed it. So when they are behind the lines and they're not under any pressure, you can see the soldiers have got this intense interest in this thing going, and they don't know what carpet to do. If they should stay still like the photographs that were taken, or if they move, and it's very awkward. They're very conscious of the camera, very conscious of the camera. But then once you got the combat, the cameraman used to go to the first aid stations when the wounded are coming in, and at that point, no one is looking at the camera at all. That's the real thing, and the camera is completely invisible, and that stuff is the most powerful stuff. Is these poor guys coming in with all sorts of wounds, and the cameraman's filming them, but there's no smiles then,
One of the most striking things is the age of many of the faces that we see. We hear the voices at the beginning, an extraordinary number of those voices talking about being 15, 16, 17. And then we find in the faces of those footage, very, very young faces. How are you zooming in on frames, or how is that working?
Well, that little sequence, we super restored it, and we zoomed in on so some of those faces of those young guys, we would, Jabez and I looked through, a lot of wide shots, so there might be like 50, 100 guys, and we'd say, God, that guy's young, well, this guy's young, and then we would really sharpen up, zoom it in and sharpen up again to try to keep the quality of the best, but we sort of tried to pick out all those kids, and they are kids. I mean, it's frightening, horrifying.
What did you find the most moving about that footage and the transformation? Because, I mean, obviously a lot of this stuff you'll be familiar with, but there will have been stuff that you hadn't seen before.
A lot, yeah.
What did you find the most profound about it?
Well, one of the things that I was surprised about, I sort of knew on one level that it happened because I've seen photographs, but it was the way that if German prisoners were taken, if any of the Germans were first aid guys, that they would pitch in to help. And so you've got a situation where you've got German medics working alongside British, and there's no guns or bayonets at them. They're completely, free, and the two sides are helping to save each other's soldiers. So German and British first aid guys are working side by side to save German and the British wounded troops. And I sort of knew that happened on a level, but I hadn't seen those shots before, and I found that reasonably powerful. It just shows how stupid war is, really.
One of the other extraordinary things is that, particularly at the beginning, we hear people saying, well, I almost thought of it as an adventure. At one point, somebody uses an analogy, which is that it's almost like a Boy Scout camp, but with a hint of danger, which obviously changes as the war goes on. It is interesting the way the film captures those feelings as well as everything else that we know about the war. How did you feel about those kind of expressions?
Well, I mean, that surprised me too, because I think we've all imposed we've all sort of tended to treat them as victims, that we sent these youths to their death in this industrial slaughterhouse, and that we somehow victimise these guys. Now that's true. I mean, that on one level is completely true. But the interesting thing is they don't treat themselves as victims. They don't have any self-pity. They're not asking you to feel sorry for themselves. But I should say too that I kept on thinking as I was hearing these voices. It was the best time of my life, and I do it again. That there is a set of voices that we're not hearing, which is the voices of the men that got killed that didn't come back. And I think those million men would have a slightly different opinion if they could be interviewed. But of course, we don't have recordings of them. So this is the film of the survivors, not the ones that didn't come back.
How difficult was it to decide which material to put in and which material? Because there was a wealth of footage that you had access to.
Well, when we started, our budget was for a 30-minute film. Now I have a little bit of a reputation for not being able to. But so I sort of 30 minutes, but. It was just so much amazing material, and I begged for more budget so we could do more, and it didn't come. It was so Claire Olsen, our producer, somehow magically managed to make an hour 40 film on a 30-minute budget for me. So because at the end of the day I thought, well, this is not about duration. So long as we can figure out how to pay for it, then. I'm a bit like I could make a 3 or 4 hour film. There's so much amazing stuff, and also you've got to realise that this film is focus literally on the infantry, the British infantry experience on the Western Front. So you've got vast aspects of the First World War that we're not covering. That the Air Force and Navy and the home front, the women in factories, the colonial troops, coming, there's of all nations, and the Gallipoli campaigns, Palestine campaigns. I mean, this is just a particular one view of one little aspect of the war, and I had to do that because I didn't want to do a once over lightly, of a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I just wanted to pick one thing and sort of drill into that.
I know it's impossible for any film to replicate the experience of being in war, but there are moments watching that when you feel, and I said this, and I know it sounds foolish, you almost feel like the shots make you feel like you're in the trenches, like you're looking. Did it surprise you how visceral that becomes?
Well, I mean, fortunately, a lot of it's good sound effects with loud bangs, and actually the artillery that you're hearing, the bangs and the whizzes of the shells, is actually real stuff, because the New Zealand Army invited us to go up to a live firing a thing that they were doing, because every few months they get to fire a few shells, whatever the New Zealand government can afford. But they invited us up, so we set up mics in the area where the shells are exploding, on the hilltop where they're screaming over. So all the shell sounds that you're hearing there are actually the real thing. But I did have a problem, because of course we had to have the big over-the-top combat scene, and there wasn't really any footage once it, and the stuff of them going over the top is from a training. They're training behind the lines. It's not the real combat. So, but once you get over the top, there's nothing. So I thought, what the hell am I going to do? And so I thought about using the faces of the guys and the dead bodies, because and then I thought about I needed some other stuff. So there was a magazine called War Illustrated that was released every single week during the war. It was something that you would go to the newsagent and buy, and because they had the same issue about not having to have, had photos, but they couldn't actually get get photos of the combat either. So they had artists draw things, and draw scenes and moments of combat. So I thought, well, this is real. This is a magazine that was sold during the war. So let's use these images can stand in for actual combat.
Does it surprise you how powerful the film is in front of an audience? Because you said, had you not seen it with an audience before today, and you could feel the reaction in the room? Well,
I felt my heart beating too. Yeah, I mean, I think what I'm most happy about is it shows the fun, and it shows that war's not fun as well. But also, I think the fun part, that's something that I think is whenever I see World War I films, fictional films, just with actors, there's never any humour. And I think that strangely, it's not an honest way to treat the war, because obviously, as you can see there, I mean, if you're under immense pressure, psychological pressure, almost a breaking point, then the last thing you're going to have to resort to is your humour. And that's what they did. And I always get a little bit angry at World War I films that are totally sort of horror all the way through. I mean, the horror's fine, it's true, but what they don't have is they don't have the way that the men actually deal with that, which is to laugh and have a clown around as much as they can. It's the only thing they can do. I mean, what else can they do?
One of the most affecting sequences is when they're playing music. You see them with the flutes and the guy playing the bottle that he's juggling, and he drops, and it's lovely because it feels completely relatable.
I wish I knew who that guy was. I mean, there's so many faces in here. I wish I knew their names. I wish I knew if they survived. I mean, the first thing I think is, did they survive the war, or was the guy with the bottle, was he killed the following week? I mean, it's just, so, well, with this restored footage now, maybe somebody, will recognise family members, and we can start to put some names to those faces. I mean, those guys at Lancashire Fusiliers, the ones who are all huddled up in the lane just before they go over the top. I mean, those men were within 20 minutes of that film being taken. It was Geoffrey Mayland shot at about 7:30 and 10 past 7 on the July the 1st. Within 20 minutes of that, those guys went over the top, and they were almost all killed. Those guys in the lane.
There's some questions have been sent in. Are you happy to answer a few of these?
Absolutely.
Okay, so this is Ollie Butinsky says, which scene in the film did you find most powerful and poignant once it was restored?
I think it's actually the scenes with the German prisoners.
Yeah.
But once once you saw once you restored it and you saw the people, it wasn't just the British, it was the Germans, and and you realise that it wasn't, for the most part. I mean, obviously there was a lot of emotion in the war. If your mate got killed and everything else, you had emotion. But for the most part, you understand that it wasn't a war of hatred. It was a war where these two groups of men were told that they had to go and fight each other. And I would imagine that no one there would really be able to tell you what they were fighting for. I mean, that was what this war was. I mean, it's what was the point of it all. I don't think they knew. But the one thing that they did know is that the British felt that the German soldiers were in the same position as them. They were told to fight. They were eating the same horrible food, the same conditions. And I think there was actually a mutual sympathy between the two sides. They didn't hate each other.
Yeah.
And they felt that they were both equally victims.
There are some very significant dedications at the end of the film. This is from Carl Lewis. Who will you be thinking about on Remembrance Day? Will it be a member of your family or someone from the film?
Oh, well, I mean, my grandfather was. I never met him. He died in 1940 of his wounds from the war, I should say. He was. I mean, by 1930, my father was 10 years old, and he was having to carry him up the stairs on his back as a 10-year-old kid because my granddad couldn't no longer walk anymore, and he died a sort of a very bad, very slow and painful death by 1940. And then there's my great uncle Sergeant Ruck, who was in the Monmouthshires, who died, and then my partner Fran Walsh, her great uncle, who was a Kiwi soldier, died. So, I think all families should. If you don't know what members of your family were in this war, and I guarantee you will have some members of your family in this war, go find out, and because the First World War suddenly, it's not. I mean, what we should do now is we should really focus. Let the historians tell the story of the war, but we should focus on our family, because they are us. Their DNA is still with us. And if you find out if you've got somebody that fought in the war, you probably will, and you probably have family members that died in the war, and that's who you should think about.
This is from Ryan Siggers. Do you think the technology used to bring this 100-year-old plus footage to life could be the kickstart for many other future historical preservation and documentary projects?
I hope so. Era? Oh, look, I mean, I'm a history buff, and what we have done here, if every archive in the world started to do this, wouldn't it be fantastic? And not just with war footage. I mean, there's so much historical footage. Even before the First World War, there's incredible footage. In the 1910s and the 1920s. I mean, it's like this can be done. It's not. I don't want to say it's not that hard, because it'll be. but we figured it all out at the end of the day, and it is. And we got it sort of in a pretty smooth pipeline. And I really hope that it inspires other archives to start restoring their footage, because it opens it. And it's not the colour. The black and white, when you slow down the black and white, clean it up and everything, these people just come to life. And so let's open that window into the past. Let's not leave them trapped in this Charlie Chaplin world. Let's actually get it restored, and then we're going to be able to really understand. It'll just open up a door that we can see their world, and that's what we should be doing. I hope. So I do hope that this inspires other archives to do the same things we've done.
And in terms of your own filmography, I mean, the first time I ever met and interviewed you was back in the 90s, when you came over with Bad Taste, years and years ago. And since then, you've gone through this extraordinary, filmmaking process with everything that changed with Lord of the Rings. And I know it's always tempting to say that the most recent thing you made is the thing you're most proud of.
Yes.
But I kind of get the sense that you sort of are most proud of this.
Well, I think it would be hard to ever, for me to ever make a more personal film than this. I mean, it is personal in the sense that I have family members that were killed there. My partner Fran has family members that were killed, and and even though there's no, I don't have film of my grandfather, I don't have any recordings of him. Every time I was listening to these soldiers and watching them, I thought, well, this is probably giving me the best insight I'm ever going to have into what my grandfather went through. So it allowed. Well, what was great about it, the process as well as the finished film, is it actually opened. It allowed me a window to think about him a lot.
And because of the way in which film works, because of the way in which we watch film, which is almost like experiencing a memory, how important is it that this footage now looks to our eye like something that's much more recent? I mean, you've taken away the distance of the format of the black and white and the speed. I mean, it looks very contemporary.
Well, I mean, I think it is important if we want, people, not just now, but in the future, to think of these men as human beings, then this is the way to humanize them. I mean, it is, the restoration is a humanizing process, and let's try and do it with as much of the film as we can.
So what you're doing with film restoration is, bringing the humanity out of it. So it's something which is a cultural project as well as a technical project.
Yeah, well, we said to the Imperial War Museum that we'd restore everything that they sent to us, at no cost, as a contribution to the centenary ourselves. So in addition to the hour and 40 minutes, and here we've restored about 100 hours of Imperial War Museum footage to the black and white stage, because but the black and white stage still is incredibly powerful. So I'm hoping that whenever I see a World War I documentary next, it's going to have a lot better footage than it has in the past. And I hope, as I say, that will lead to all the other archives doing it. Yeah.
Peter, I think it's a remarkable achievement. I think second time round, if anything, it was even more powerful. So congratulations on an extraordinary job. Ladies and gentlemen, Peter Jackson.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Basic protocol in terms of leaving. Can I ask everybody to stay in their seats until the ushers tell your rows to leave? Thank you ever so much, everybody, for coming here. It's been a remarkable evening. Thank you to everybody watching around the country. Thank you. Peter, anything else you'd like to say?
No, I would just like to thank everyone who thought it was important enough to come and see this film, and because I really appreciate the fact that you came along, because it is important. It's important, and this wasn't about the war. It's about people, and it's important that we start to think of them as human beings again, not as figures in a history book.
Congratulations.
Thank you.